Hey everybody, Tanner over at CMG again. So we've been talking in a number of other videos about real estate market, real estate values, increases in wealth with real estate, investing in real estate, all these different things. One thing we should probably jump into, which obviously is my main field of expertise, is actually being able to buy real estate with financing. So, if you're in one of those lucky positions where you can buy a house in cash, congratulations, that's pretty awesome. If you're not, which is the majority of Americans, we want to make sure, obviously, that we have conversations on programs that are available on ways to decrease costs long term with these different programs, ways to increase the likelihood of you acquiring property that is beneficial to you with these different programs, so on and so forth. So let's jump into kind of one of the big topics right now, which is talking about interest rates and how to not have to pay high interest. Obviously, we've had every discussion under the sun in the news, online, everywhere else about how mortgage rates and interest rates in general are pretty high right now. And that's of course going to be based on what you're looking at. So yes, are they high compared to 2021? Yes, they definitely are. Are they high compared to the 1980s? No, they definitely are not. So, we've got to make sure we're talking about the true factor here of where we're sitting at, which is that as of right now, compared to recent years, rates are higher. So, what do we do to try to decrease the interest rate a little bit? But more importantly, what do we do to decrease your cost? Because that's really the big piece, right? The interest rate doesn't actually matter. What matters is how much interest are you paying? How much cost do you have with the interest that you're paying within whichever program you're using? So I wanted to bring up a few different options, and we'll go through these in other videos in more detail, but just to give you an overview of some of the different ways that we can decrease your interest costs by using some of these strategies and putting you hopefully in a better position as long as some of these work, which, just for a heads up, they may not fit perfectly in the beginning, but at some point hopefully these can be tools that you can use to lower your total cost, put yourself in a better long-term position, so on and so forth. So the first one that's highlighted here in the light blue box is a program that's called the All-in-One Loan. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is a program that's through CMG Mortgage. There are some brokers that can offer the program as well, but for the most part, what you're going to see is the only way to access this program is through CMG. But it is something worth putting in the back of your mind as far as a potential tool. The all-in-one loan, the initial purpose of the program was to help people get in a position where they can pay far less interest than they would with a normal mortgage. I'm sure to some extent that when we're talking about a normal 30-year, 20-year, whatever amortizing mortgage, the first on a 30-year, the first 22 years of that mortgage, you're paying more interest than you are principal, which principal is what we want to pay to build equity in that property. So if we have that long of a time frame that we're paying interest on a normal mortgage or more interest than principal, what can we do to strategize and change that? Well, the all-in-one loan is actually designed to help people pay off their house much faster without having to change their budget around quite a bit. And if you want to get more info in this, just obviously let me know. I'm trying to go through all of the dynamics of this program on this short video is not going to fit. But more or less what it does is it integrates your bank account with your mortgage, and any money that goes into your bank account automatically offsets your mortgage balance. So you, in general, are only going to pay interest on the mortgage balance that you show, not the actual mortgage balance that you will owe, therefore leading to you paying less interest. It's a super amazing program. It's the program that I personally use for myself. So that program, again, is a specific program initially designed to help people just pay their house off ultra fast, have way less interest costs, and have more control over their money. The second option you can see is you always, so let's say the all-in-one loan isn't a good fit. You always can do shorter terms on your mortgages. So obviously the shorter the term or the faster you pay off that mortgage, the less interest cost you're actually going to accrue. So for an example, if we, instead of doing a normal 30-year mortgage, comfortably could put you into a 20-year mortgage, and that was something that you were wanting to do as far as the setup goes, then that allows you to pay off that mortgage faster, for 10 years faster in that instance, and decreases your actual interest costs over that time frame pretty considerably. So the second option, has always been available, known, but you can always use shorter terms, pay off the property faster. You also could just do a 30-year mortgage and then just pay that down faster. You don't have to do a 20-year term or 15-year term. You could still do a 30-year term and just pay more principal on a monthly basis, get out of that mortgage faster, pay way less cost. The box up on the top right are items that we'll go into as well in a little bit more detail in other videos. The first one is what's called a permanent buy down. So when we're talking about interest rate, there are a huge variety of different interest rates that you can actually choose from. So when you see quotes online, let's say somebody's quoting a 7.125 interest rate or whatever online, that it doesn't mean that that's the interest rate that you have to go with. That's just a interest rate that you could go with. So one thing you can do is you can choose to take a different interest rate, a lower interest rate, and pay some fees up front to buy down your rate to those lower ranges. Now, this definitely helps out with lowering your monthly payments because you have lower interest rates. Can long-term lower your total interest costs. But the one thing that you do want to think about when we're talking about permanent interest rate buy downs, lowering the interest rate permanently by paying extra money up front, is if you aren't going to potentially keep this mortgage very long. For instance, in today's age, you likely could be refinancing in the next 2 or 3 years if rates drop. May not be the perfect idea in this current environment because you may not have that mortgage long enough to make your money back on the fees that you pay up front. Could it still be beneficial? Definitely. Will it be? It's tough to say until we really know the timeframes of when you could be refinancing. But in general, it will definitely lower your interest rate, it'll lower your interest costs, and it'll lower your monthly payment. The fourth one on there is what's called a temporary buy down. So temporary interest rate buy down literally means you're buying the interest rate down for a short period. Okay. The benefits of temporary buy downs in comparison to permanent buy downs is you're taking roughly the same amount of money as you would with the permanent buy down, but you're just applying it to dropping that rate to a greater extent for a shorter term. So as an example, what you'll hear a lot of people talk about is a 2-1 buy down. That literally just means that you're buying an interest rate down for 2 years. The first year is 2% lower in interest. So if you started again at 7%, your first year that you'd be making payments on that house would only be 5% interest rate. The second year, it'd be a 2-1. So then you go 1% lower. So the second year, you'd have a 6% interest rate in that example. And then everything would go back to that 7%. But the first number of years, you would save yourself quite a bit of money on interest. You'd have your payment considerably lower and can be a really good fit for people. Let's say you're expecting a pay raise in the next year or two. So you're going to be more comfortable on your income and your budget, but it's just not there quite yet. You can do a temporary buy down, lower your expenses during the short time frame, have that be more affordable when you have more income, and have that be a good fit. The other time that it comes into play is if you do think this mortgage is going to be pretty short term because you're going to be refinancing or going to be selling in the not too distant future. Therefore, you can do this temporary buy down, give yourself a much bigger bang for your buck for those short couple of years or number of years you choose, and have yourself in a position where you're paying much less interest cost. And with both of these examples, the permanent buy down and the temporary buy down, when you're making an offer on a house, you can ask the seller to cover closing costs for you and we can use those closing costs dollars from the seller to pay for these buy downs. So this is not something that you have to pay out of pocket. You can choose to do so, but obviously most people try to get the benefit of having the seller pay for this to save them even more money in the long run. Any questions on these, obviously let me know. We'll put some more videos out to go into a little bit more detail on each one of those. But hopefully this has been pretty helpful, and we'll talk to you in a little bit.